Hello, everyone. This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We've been in business now for 12 years, assisting companies in quality and manufacturing consultation, NADCAP implementation, also implementation and certification of ISO and International Standards Organization and its derivatives. My background is aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt with different industries, actually many industries throughout the world: automotive, electronics, medical, etc., aerospace. This video is based on how Israel was duped by Hamas and planned a devastating assault on Israel. And the title of this video, the title is Brain Fog Likely Leads to Israel's Delayed Response. QA Authority Daryl Guberman explains. And after the data, you'll find everything you need to corroborate what I'm saying here, because it's a sad state of affairs. When you have Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister, well, I will let him say it in his own words, and then I will get back to this. I'm going to show you this, the placards and everything that ties everything together. But my hypothesis as the CEO and quality authority and quality expert within the realm of many industries feels that it was due in part to the COVID vaccine. I know you're probably laughing. Well, look at the issues down below this video and listen to the Prime Minister of Israel giving an interview not that long ago, probably about 2 years ago, about 2 years ago. And listen in his own words, please.
Detailed plans, but they are detailed in my mind. We came out of COVID first. I described that in my book, Conversations with Albert Bohr about Pfizer. And I persuaded him to give tiny Israel the necessary vaccines to get us out first from the COVID. And the reason I could do that is because we have a database, 98%, a medical database, 98% of our population has digitized medical records and little card. And anywhere you go in any hospital in Israel, north, south, doesn't make any difference. Boom, you punch it in, and you know everything about this patient for the last 20 years. I said, we'll use that to tell you whether these vaccines, what do they do to people, not individual people, not with their individual identities, but statistically, what does it do to people with, meningitis? What does it do to people with high blood pressure? What is it? You want to know that. So Israel became, if you will, the lab for Pfizer, and that's how we did it.
Now I'm going to say this. Israel became the lab for Pfizer. The reason why I do this video too as well is to inform people, not just in Israel, but all over the world, that Pfizer did not, you know why it takes 10 years to do a vaccination tests and all that? Because they have to test the contraindications of how that vaccine is going to affect those that are on blood pressure, those that are on thyroid medication. And as you heard Benjamin Netanyahu state verbatim that Israel was used, and those people who were taking blood pressure medicine, thyroid medication, etc., they're the ones who were the lab rats for Pfizer's test. They had live, specimens. Now we're going to go a little bit further. I have been discussing the American National Standards Institute, which is a corrupt, fully immersed, non-for-profit, non-governmental agency that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2018, you will see it, they took over the American National Accrediting Board. They are underwriters, which means they took full legal responsibility for any failures, not just systematic, but by being an underwriter, they take product failure, and it's on them. You're dealing with an $84 million company, corporation, lawyers, and I say that very, let me just say this. The lawyers, the American Bar Association, is deeply involved with ANSI-ANAP. They help standards and all the rest of this stuff. You have the Department of Justice sitting on ANSI's board. And let's continue on, ladies and gentlemen. You have Pfizer that sits on ANSI's board. And you're going to see that Pfizer sits by the FDA, CDC, NIH, USDA, FBI, etc., and DOJ. ANSI has a term that they use all the time. We are impartial. They are far from impartial, ladies and gentlemen. I can attest to that. I can be an expert witness in court because they are not impartial. And here it is, impartial oversight. Impartial oversight. You have Johnson & Johnson that skipped quality processes and had to recall 70 million vials of the COVID vaccine. You have Lockheed Martin sits on ANSI. All these organizations sit on ANSI. You have Lockheed Martin who, after the 801st delivery of the F-35, they still have quality issues up to including loss of airplane and loss of pilot. You have the LCS Littoral battleship that Lockheed makes. It has a terrible quality record. It is a boondoggle of economic loss for our tax dollars. You have Boeing who fudged documentation in the course of manufacture of their planes. And what happens? You have AOG Technics who supplied materials for engines CFM56, aerospace engines for 737 aircraft. And they fudged documentation. Why not? They see Boeing do it. Why not they follow suit? And Boeing, again, sits on ANSI's board. There's a story here within the realm of quality, and there's a special word that I want all of you to understand, Israel and every place else. Obfuscation. The action of making something obscure, unclear, and unintelligible. They all go by, we are a voluntary consensus. It's not voluntary. It's basically mandated. They say they have nothing to do with the government, but what they do is they have government agencies on ANSI so that they can wine and dine and make themselves very strong. Impervious to people like me, but it isn't impervious because we're coming for you, ANSI. We're coming for you, ANAB, because you are disgusting. The board of directors, the directors at large, is the most hideous culmination of not only some government agencies, but of a lot of corporations on board. Randy Doherty, I have to get into him real quick. Randy Doherty invited us, but let me tell you the saga here. In 2013, I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. There was a gentleman there that was sent there to destroy me because at that time, the American Society for Quality owned the American National Crediting Board 50%, while ANSI owned it 50%. And he was sent there to destroy me. Instead, we have him on audio files stating, Mr. Guberman, ANAB has no problem with you. In fact, we support you, sir. That was a load of shit. Let's continue. He was the director. He was a Region 3 director, which he had some weight there. We didn't need their approval. In 2016, Randy Doherty, who at the time was the technical advisor of ANAB, and he was also the chairman of the IAF and also the principal on the IF 990 tax form, which means he controlled the whole ball of wax. He invited us and he said everything is voluntary, either to join ANAB or the IF, which is the International Accreditation Forum incorporated in Delaware. Let me tell you a fact as a proud American, ladies and gentlemen. For those business owners who are ANAB accredited, shame on you. You can be considered anti-American, and we have the proof. And that's not bullshit, and that's not a conspiracy theory. Let's continue, though. During that time, in 2015, you're going to see the pictures that Randy handed over leadership to a communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who was not only the IAF chairman promoted at the time, but he was also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. The same organization that certified the laboratory in Wuhan, China, BioLevel 4, that did let, without a doubt, did let that virus go, because we have an attestment from a Miss Pamela Sale, the Vice President of Quality for Laboratory, and she confessed to the fact of the Wuhan, China, and we will show that to you very shortly. Randy said that the IAF is an ILAC, which is the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, and the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum incorporated in Delaware. ILAC is in Australia. He said in an article, that they are, when he was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF and the principal on the IAF tax report, he said that both IAF and ILAC are sister organizations. He went on to further say in this email on when he was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF, and the principal on the IAF tax firm, he said an IAF MLA, which is a multilateral agreement organization, and an MRA is a multi-regional agreement organization, is equivalent in accreditation to ANAB, which means if ANSI, ANAB, and they are underwriters for the IAF and ILAC, they take full responsibility of those accreditation bodies that are equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. And lawyers, I know you make up stories. They're not. Oh, yeah, they are. But that's in a truthful world. That's in a world of integrity. This is what an underwriter is. An underwriter is any party that evaluates and assumes another party's risk for a fee, and that will be a fee for all the accreditation bodies. Now, the IAF is a repository for all these international accreditation bodies. ANSI, ANAB are underwriters, okay, for the IAF and ILAC. Those accreditation bodies are equivalent in accreditation to ANSI, ANAB. Thus, any issue that happens under their body's certification, under their accreditation, it falls back to ANSI, ANAB. Here is a solicitation from the United States government, State Department. The worst thing about this, okay, when it goes into saying that ANSI, ANAB are underwriters for the IF, and I have the document, it's coming up, is the date on here. The date is 2018. Now remember, Zhao Jinwu got promoted to chairman of the IF. Now he's got a background. He's been involved with our quality since 1994, making his way up, looking at quality, and he's mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. You'll see that shortly. During this time, China is called out, basically the IAF, on a State Department SW, which is a standard operation work order. This is the actual number of that. It states in there that it must be ANSI, ANAB, and they are underwriters for the IAF. And of course, ILAC, as I told you. And here's the actual cut from the contract, the standard operating work order. And you can see right over here, it states, ANAB is an underwriter for the International Accreditation Forum, and this is on a government contract. So that means they're fully responsible for any failures within the system or within like Lockheed, Boeing, you name it, GE, you name it, there's an issue. This is just a sample of the government agencies that are on board, that are that ANSI, ANAB are underwriters for. And now here we go. ANSI is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental entity that's over 104 years old. It has both federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2015, Randy Doherty, then the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IF, he was there from 2009 to 2015 as the ANAB vice president, and also you have him and also the IF, the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. He was also the chairman of that, and he sat on the tax report as the principal, which he had complete control. You have Zhao Jinwu here, a communist Chinese national, who was mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take your data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. He was also the chairman of the China National Accreditation Services. Here's an actual correspondence, or actually a write-up on the IF, about Zhao Jinwu, how Randy was proud of him. Since 1994, he's also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services. Unbelievable. We have a special guest. He came from China. He was just eating some food, but we brought him over here. Here's Xi Jinping, the president, and he is basically Zhao Jinwu is mandated by his country of origin to take your data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7, right there. Okay. Sitting on ANSI's board is ANAB, the American National Crediting Board. In 2018, ANAB took over complete control over, ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. They both sat for a long time, but between those years of 2015 and 2021, ANSI and ANAB sat on the IAF. In China, there is over 10 different registrars that are ANSI/ANAB accredited that can issue quality certifications. Here's a picture from 2017 of Zhao Jinwu standing in the laboratory at Wuhan, China. As I told you, he is both the chairman of the IF at the time and also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, 2017. Here, it came out of a Chinese technical document for laboratory and science and all this. And this is about upcoming events, second China-US workshop on the challenges of emerging infections, laboratory safety, and global security. From May 17th to 19th, 2017, as you can see, and the first business on there, the first bullet point over here, is gain of function research, which meant that when Mr. Fauci of the NIH was inquisitioned by Rand Paul, okay, and Rand Paul asked him, Mr. Fauci, do you know anything about gain of function? We had nothing to do with it. That's what he said. The problem is that NIH, you're going to see, sits on ANSI's board, right by the FDA, USDA, Johnson & Johnson, FBI, all the rest of that, and also Pfizer. And here it is. So they were discussing this gain of function thing several years before COVID broke. I started to delve into this whole quality stuff when I read these things about laboratory failure. And this was a title on one of the articles that many failures are happening under the banner of accredited certification. Mr. Marvin Schechter, a lawyer, put into a report, a very special report indeed. And I'm going to say this to you again, business owners, my fellow citizens, the Israelis. I want to say this. My heart goes out to you as a fellow Jew. It's unbelievable. And the animalistic activities on both sides. We've seen videos from friends of ours in the Middle East, videos that were taken and not shown in the United States, but we've seen them. I will say this: the COVID fog makes you an animal. And you have no remorse. It appears this way. I'm saying it appears this way. On both sides of the equation, I saw the Israeli soldiers doing some bad things. I saw the Hamas doing bad things. And never before have we seen the disgusting display on both sides of the brutality. There is on both sides. I've seen those videos. I don't make this up. Mr. Marvin Schechter wrote this report. And he said in it, he said basically in the report in 2011 to the state of New York, he said that having a certificate in laboratory accreditation from ASCLD Lab, which is owned by ANSI/ANAB, is like having a badge of honor. It does nothing for the system at all. We have a whole mess of laboratory failure articles, if you want to see them, to prove our efficacy about this mess. In 2019, 2 years later after that, I saw an accreditation body called A2LA, and I exposed the factor that A2LA is the accreditation body that does a lot of laboratories, a lot of government laboratories as well. They are sitting on ANSI's board, and I came out with an article. I came out with a video, and underneath my video, several days later, a woman wrote me, a Miss Ashley Morton, who at the time was working for A2LA, said, no, they're separate entities unto themselves. Well, as you can see, and I showed this in the video, A2LA does sit on ANSI. They are not separate entities. They're together, and they also sat at the time, and they still do, on the communist-led IAF, which is incorporated in Delaware between 2015 and 2021. You had a communist national watching over places like Lockheed Martin. So we pulled an article during the time Mr. Zhao Jinwu was issuing that certificate in Wuhan, China. Miss Pamela Sale, the vice president of quality for laboratory, stated under a legal deposition in Texas because they had a problem with lab failure. And she basically said this, and you can see it. If you want me to send it to you, I'll gladly send it to you. Daryl, TQRS@yahoo.com or 203-556-1493. And it goes like this. One of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs, and I'm adding this, bio-level 4 labs, phlebotomy labs, around the country and the world have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs can choose to follow or not. That's the way they can get rid of liability, because they say, I don't know, but they still issue a verifiable certificate against the standard. which means they are falsifying a standard that should be rock solid when it comes to that. So she basically said the Wuhan lab has no protocols, has nothing to follow. They did their own thing. In fact, in 2017-18, a United States delegation were over in Wuhan, and the scientists were saying, please, you have to help us. We don't have that well-trained people here in the lab. And they were dealing with highly contagious viruses, and they didn't have quality people. And they say in a actual document that was written by the CDC in May of 2019, and it only discussed laboratory training for a laboratory Wuhan, China lab, not all the laboratories that are bio-level 4 in China or anywhere else. So it's just Wuhan. And they said the most important part of a laboratory for security is to have well-trained individuals. Well, they didn't. As I showed you, here it is. Pfizer sits on ANSI's board over by Johnson & Johnson, all the rest of that. And here it is. You'll have Albert Bourla. He will be down below in the description giving a interview to Megan Terrell of, I think at the time, MSNBC. And he said that the Pfizer vaccine was made to quality standards. It was made in the sun. It's a great vaccine. Yet we have articles here that said Pfizer skipped quality processes and standards, and they had to have recalls because of this mess. So Albert Bourla should be fired. You have the factor that Albert Bourla and the Prime Minister Netanyahu made a deal that Israel was going to be a laboratory for Pfizer because they had no tests about the contraindications between medications you're taking and medications that are in the future of you. They just jabbed you. Here's a perfect example of a nice flyer that shows America and Israelis too, without a doubt. My feeling still is about the brain fog with usually you've seen past history of Israel and they were Johnny on the spot. This time there was hesitation. I know you're going to be saying to me, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know. Well, look in the description, ladies and gentlemen, about brain fog. And it doesn't happen the day you get shot. 6 days after, a week after, it happens now several years after, this brain fog accrues in your brain and people are less likely to be reactive. They're more docile. And this is not just going to affect Israel. I would imagine that it's going to affect our own servicemen and women who are in uniform, who are out there 24/7 trying to protect us. Now it's an added hazard when you took the shot, and our military forced many of our men and women in uniform to take that. What a shame. Oh my God. But I'm going to say this as well. IAF stands for It Always Fails, and it does. And ILAC stands for Is Laboratory Accreditation Credible? This is the hypothesis I put out on you as to why there was hesitation, why there was a delay, why you had all of these people coming in when that used to be not the modus operandi. Israel was Johnny on the spot. My feeling is, and this may be a way off the cuff, it was brain fog from the COVID shot. And you have to say, thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu, for using laboratory rats, the Israeli population. Shalom, 203-556-1493, or Daryl, Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. This is a hypothesis that may come to pass even in the United States Army, people manufacturing automotives, people who are doing electronics, who are manufacturing planes. This is a problem. School children, teachers, educators, brain fog. Unbelievable. This is no bullshit. It's down below in the description. Integrity, honesty, and the truth. And the last thing I'm going to say, I'm sorry for the length of this, but when speaking the truth, it is many times like administering medication to the dead. And if you have brain fog, and this is the actual thing that they're going to discover more than likely with Israeli soldiers, if you have brain fog, you're going to have a lot of catastrophe. I thank you. And I appreciate you. Thank you.